Hi guys, and welcome to another kit review. Okay, so today, as you can see, we're having a look at a kit from Tamiya. In 1/35th scale, it is their Panzer Kampfwagen II Ausf FG. This kit originally came out in 1971, and this current kit number is 35009. And from what I can see, this is exactly the same kit that came out in 1971. Has been reissued a couple of times with new parts, but in this configuration with the 5 figures in Afrika Korps uniform, it's exactly the same kit that I made back in the 1970s. Okay, so as you can see, classic Tamiya box art, white background, okay, highlighting the tank and the troops you get with it. Okay, so this is quite a small box. Retails for around about $15–16 Australian at the moment, and is one of Tamiya's current ongoing issues. You can always find this somewhere in a shop somewhere. It is quite cheap and a great little beginner's kit as well. Okay, so let's have a look at the rest of the box. On the side you'll see 4 more classic Tamiya kits from the 70s. Panther, King Tiger, Tiger 1, and the Type 61 Japanese Self-Defense Force. On the other side, in Japanese, this will be a brief history of the Panzer II. These are the standard helmet decals for early in the war, for Wehrmacht troops, soon dispensed with. Okay, and that's it. So that's the box. Let's have a look and see what we've got inside. Okay, so top hull and bottom, and this is quite a small tank. Okay, so yeah, it won't take up much shelf space. One big bag of sprues, 2 vinyl tracks, and as you can see, it does have the modern Tamiya tech tips. So like I said, this is an ongoing issue by Tamiya. And 2 sets of instructions, 1 English, 1 Japanese. Okay, and they look like typical classic 1970s Tamiya style. Okay, so let's get rid of those and the box, and in a second, as usual, we'll have a look at the instructions and the decals. Okay, so let's have a look at the instructions. And in the middle of the instructions, I also found a separate painting and marking sheet. It's all in Japanese, but we'll have a look at that shortly. Okay, so standard 1970s classic Tamiya instructions. It is just a simple fold-out sheet. Okay, as I said, this is an easy kit to build, definitely a beginner's kit. Does, however, give you a full, almost full history, although I don't think it's quite accurate. Almost a full history of the tank itself, the Panzer II, and also the operation in Africa and Europe. Okay, it does give you this outline of the 8th Tank Regiment, how many tanks were in it, how the layout was, and a very good detailing of the operations in North Africa. Also, you get, these are your painting marking for your Afrika Korps troops. Okay, so the main concentration for this particular model is North Africa. Okay, and that's probably the way I will build this one. All right, I think in the 1970s I built it as a Panzer Grey. Okay, so that's what you get on the front cover, so to speak. Let's have a look and see what's inside. Very basic, very easy. So you got your lower hull. It already has all the suspension and axles molded in. Just put the back on, make up the wheels, the drive sprocket and the idlers, pop those in position, and then straight onto the turret, which is very simple build. Turret bin, commander's ring, gun, and then straight onto tools, and the whole thing just goes together. And it, from what I can remember, this basically just clicks together. It doesn't have to be glued. You can click it together, because originally this tank was designed to be motorized, and from what I can see on the lower hull, it still has the battery position in it. Of course, here you've got your construction for the 5 figures. Classic style Tamiya, does have a sprue layout, and also a little black and white photo of a diorama setting. So all of this harks back to the 1970s, when Tamiya was first producing model kits. Okay, so that's the instructions. Let's have a look at the markings, and as I said, it's a single-sided sheet in Japanese, so therefore you don't know which units are which, but you do have your Afrika Korps units and also your European, Poland, France units as well. Overall painting guides, and I'm going to assume, because I can't read Japanese, I'm sure somebody can, you're going to have a dark yellow and green, dark yellow and brown, Panzer grey, etc, etc. Okay, but use your modern references, because this is a 1970s kit and 1970s references. How do I know that? Because it says Ausf F, Ausf G. The Ausf G was only made in 12 basic prototype tanks, and that was it. It wasn't operational, and most of the turrets were used in fortifications. So here we have the decals, and as you can see, the copyright on the decals is 2001. So as I said, this is an ongoing issue by Tamiya. The decals are up to date, very clean, and very sharp. Fairly basic, but that's all you're going to get on a Panzer II anyway. So that's your decals. I'll give you a shot of those, and in a second we will have a look at the sprues. Okay, so let's have a look at the sprues. So as you can see, this is your upper hull. Still fairly crisp, still fairly nicely molded. A little bit of mold line showing up now, because I think the mold is getting a bit old. And as you can see, there are 3 points along the side here where it was broken off the main sprue. But apart from that, okay, as I said, really simple build. Alright, so I think with this particular kit, it all comes down to weathering it and seeing what you can come out of it. Let's have a look at the other side. Yep, just the usual molding points. None of these things you'll see when you've built the kit, so that's not too bad for a, what, 1971 50-year-old kit. All right, and a 50-year-old mold. That's not bad at all. And just to prove that it is a 50-year-old mold, there you have it. This is your bottom hull. That's where your batteries go. That's where your switch goes. This was originally a motorized vehicle, and I'm not sure if you can see it right there on the right hand side, right there, 1971. Okay, that's when this mold was made. That's when this tank first came out. So fairly simple, straightforward. As you can see, all the suspension axles all molded in onto the hull, so not much to do there. There you go, there's your on switch. Okay, nothing's changed. I remember building this back in the 70s. Okay, so that's the upper and lower hull. Let's have a look at the rest of it. First sprue, and there is only 4 sprues in this kit, and 2 of those are to do with the figures. Turret, of course, turret bin, spare tracks. Okay, this is your guns, main gun, machine gun, and tools and accessories. And yes, there you have it. 1971 is the copyright on this particular sprue. So detail wise, it's not too bad. It's not yeehaw. Okay, it's not 2021 bolts and screws and things all over the place, but it's still a nice little kit and it still holds up well. Okay, if you want a cheap, easy weekend kit to build, this would be the one to get, especially if you want to give someone a model for the birthday, beginner, one of these, easy kit to build. Now the next part is just the wheels. This is your commander figure in Afrika Korps uniform. He has binoculars. This is your dry sprocket, your idler, and your bogey wheels. Okay, so fairly straightforward. And yes, even though this is a 1970s kit, it does have some reasonable bolt detail. Not, as I said, fantastic, but for a 1970s kit, this was, and Tamiya was, and still is, probably one of the best manufacturers out there. Consistent in their quality. This is 50 years old and there's no flash on here, or very little flash. Okay, the detail might not be sharp and wonderful, but like I said, for a weekend kit, really nice. Okay. And the next sprue is your infantry figures. Okay, so let's have a look at these guys. You get 4 figures. One has an machine gun, the others have rifles, and as you can see, there is a fair amount of mold line cleanup on some of these figures. Let's have a look at their faces. Fairly plain, but not too bad. Remember, this is 50 years old, and the detail on the faces is a lot better than what was available back then. So yeah, there's a bit of cleanup on the mold line, but these figures will still come up quite well, and you do get a reasonable accessories like water bottles, bayonets, etc. Okay, so let's have a look at the last sprue. And yes, this is dated 1971, and this is your MT34 K98, which is an average K98. I'd probably replace the weapons with something from one of their newer kits. Yeah, Africa pith helmets, standard helmets, belt bands, bread bags, etc. And 4 bases. Okay, so that's something you don't get in kits nowadays, is a base for the figures. And even though this is a 1971 kit, those MP40s are still pretty good. The K98 I call average. You can see the mold line on the MG34. So yes, I'd replace those, but you could get away with the MP40s without a problem. Okay, and that is the last sprue. And the only other thing left is your vinyl tracks and your polyvinyls. Okay, and that's it, guys. That is Tamiya's Panzer Kampfwagen II of FG, originally issued in 1971, and as I said, a constant reissue. Great little kit to build on a weekend, great little kit for a beginner. Okay, I can't see anyone going wrong building this one, and you can have a lot of fun with it. Okay, so as usual, that brings us to the end of this review. Hope you've got something from it. Thank you for subscribing, thank you for your comments, and until next time, as usual, I'll see you later.